In what has already been a historic year for Captain Sidney Crosby, he continued to cement his legacy on Sunday night against the New York Islanders. Hunter and I are going to break down that and more on this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
Your Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social medias at synonym for wet. Joined as always by my co-host Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's account a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. Plus, if you follow us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that notification button so you can be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Before we get going, just a quick note here. As you can see, it is just Hunter and I on this Monday edition of Locked On Penguins. Jesse Marshall is continuing to enjoy his holiday season. We're hoping to get him back next week. Appreciate him pinch hitting for me last Monday while I was on the road. So one goes one way, one goes the other. That's just how it goes when you've got some great teamwork. But Hunter, let's jump into today's episode. We will break down the home at home against the New York Islanders in the second segment, but we have to start this episode talking about the history that was made on Sunday night at PPG Paints Arena. Sidney Crosby takes his place in Penguins history as the franchise leader in assists, getting his 1,034th assist as a Penguin in the regular season, passing the all-time great Mario Lemieux. And if it wasn't one of the most Sidney Crosby assists we have ever seen from him, behind the net, backhand, almost blind to Michael Bunting for a power play goal to extend the Penguins' lead. It was a classic, a vintage Sidney Crosby assist. And there are some other milestones that we could be looking down here. Maybe not soon, but at some point. Hunter, what have you got for us?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's crazy. You know, we've been hosting this show together for quite a while now that, yeah, we both know what we're probably going to say for something like that. But it really was a vintage Crosby pass right in his office, behind the net, threads the needle to Michael Bunting. He makes no mistake. I am glad that he got the assist, or he broke the record, with that assist on that goal compared to last night where, yeah, it was cool for a time, but I figured that one was going to get taken away the Saturday night game. That is, we're recording this on Sunday night, because if you really break down that play, Pat, I mean, it was obvious that it was kind of a little bit of a broken play there with Bunting's goal on that one. But hey, it was so nice that he did it twice, as the saying goes, right? But he breaks the record, and it's so surreal seeing him break a record like that, because when he first comes into the league, you know, he's labeled, he's the next one, he's going, he has all this hype, right? And you're thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if he's able to break all of these records that Mario set that you never thought would ever be broken, considering how great of a player Mario was. I mean, I still think he's the greatest player this league has ever seen. And the fact that we now have this one broken goes to show how special of a player Sidney Crosby is and how spoiled we have been to watch him ever since he came into the league. Next up, man, it's the goals and the points. It's a little less than 90 right now. 88 goals to tie, 89 to break that record from Lemieux. And Pat, it's 88 to break his point record, 1,723. And I do think by the end of Crosby's career, he is going to be the franchise's all-time leader in goals, assists, and points. It's going to take a bit longer, obviously, for the goals and the points. I think points he's going to definitely be able to get in the next season and a half. Goals might be a little bit longer than that considering his age, but I do think he's going to get them. But just a fantastic night. Love seeing his family there, and what an assist it was. I feel so blessed to have watched him for his entire career.
I'm right there with you, and you brought up the hype. It's rare to see, and we kind of forget this as Penguins fans because we have been so absolutely spoiled to not only see 87, but 71, 58, and a myriad of other very talented players come through Pittsburgh and wear the skating Penguin logo. But again, you mentioned the hype. It is extremely rare to see a player live up to the hype to this level, and he absolutely has 3 Stanley Cup championships, multiple MVPs, scoring championships, gold medals, the golden goal in the 2010 Winter Olympics. He's done just about everything you can do in this sport up to this point. And it wouldn't shock me. I kind of want to get hinted at this a little bit. I kind of want to get a little bit more out of you on it, but the way I look at it with where he sits right now, little under 90 each way for points and goals to catch and pass Mario Lemieux as the franchise's all-time leader in goals and points. I think you're right on goals. I think that's going to take probably the majority of the last 2 years on his extension, which kick in next year. But it wouldn't shock me, Hunter, by the end of 2025, the calendar year, not the 24-25 season. I think he catches Mario Lemieux in points by the end of the 2025 calendar year.
Yeah, if not then, I think by the end of the 25-26 season, with the way he's continuing to produce right now, he's on fire, man. He's going to, I think, get a lot more points, especially if he keeps playing the way that he's been playing these last several weeks, and he'll really cut into that gap by the end of this season. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. If it's not by the end of the calendar year in 25, Pat, it's by the end of that season, the 25-26 season, that is.
Oh, 100%. You just look at and like you said, just look at the way that he has been playing very recently. You look at tonight's game, adds an assist, or 2 nights ago against the Islanders. He's obviously held off the score sheet, but tonight he gets himself back on the score sheet with an assist. 4-point night against the Flyers on the 23rd, held off the score sheet against the Devils, but then 4 points against Nashville, assist against the Kings, 3 assists against Montreal. He has rounded extremely into form over the last couple of weeks. And what do you know? Over the last couple of weeks, the Penguins have been playing some of their best hockey. And we're going to cut this first segment a little bit short today. That way we can go over the 2 games that were played this weekend, the home at home against the New York Islanders. The Penguins lose on Saturday night on Long Island, but then redeem themselves on Sunday night and pick up a clean 2 points at PPG Paints Arena. We will dive into those games when we return. But first, we've got to tell you about our sponsor today, and that is Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you thought you were paying for twice? That has most certainly happened to me. I have definitely had a few subscriptions I didn't realize I was paying for once that free trial ended, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 per year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, like I said, one of the best features is that subscription tracker. You guys know the feeling. You sign up for a streaming service, you sign up for something online, you get that 1 month free trial, you put down your debit card, you forget about it a month later, and what do you know? All of a sudden, you're locked in. I've used Rocket Money to cancel those services that I wasn't using, saved a ton of money, and there's also their goals feature. I've been able to automatically set money aside for my future, so no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, welcome back to the Monday edition, and it's a Victory Monday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp, joined, as always, by the one and only Hunter Hodes. So let's go in chronological order here. Hunter, we'll start with Saturday night, where the Penguins lose 6-3 to the New York Islanders, and I am going to kind of contradict myself, but bear with me on this one. I didn't hate the Penguins' overall effort on Saturday night. The problem lies with the second period. I thought they played fine enough, a fairly okay road period in the first period, especially when you go to Long Island. You know that even a home game, which we'll get into against the New York Islanders, is an absolute slog. I thought they did fine enough. Then they just sleptwalk through the second period. They completely just decided to take that period off, and that ended the game for them. They score late. They kind of make it interesting, but too little too late. They end up losing that game. It just shows where this team is overall. If they want to continue this push into the playoffs, they got to play a full 60. You cannot take any time off. They did on Saturday, and it came back to bite them.
That game on Saturday for me was won and lost, especially for the Penguins in the neutral zone. I thought the Penguins were horrendous in the neutral zone for most of that game. I will agree with you about the first period. I thought it was fine. They weathered the storm. You get the tying goal. But in the second period, they vomited all over themselves. You get the 4-2 goal because Ilya Sorokin lets that puck sweep past him. You get the deflection to make it 4-3. It's like, okay, the Islanders, they've been really struggling to hold leads all year. If you can somehow, some way steal this one in the third, that would be great. But then they come out flat in the third period, and they just weren't generating anything that entire period. The Islanders did a surprisingly great job at really shutting down the Penguins, because the Penguins, they have been great in terms of generating chances at 5-on-5 all season long. They did not get anywhere near the offensive zone in the third period. So I will credit the Islanders for that. But I also feel like, again, the Penguins were really bad in the neutral zone in that period and throughout most of that game. Way too many odd man rushes they were giving up. Way too many aggressive pinches. Just weren't taking care of the puck at all, especially, again, in the neutral zone. And I really feel like the Penguins, that plagued them in that game. I thought they were too sloppy. I thought they were still kind of at the beach, honestly, coming out of this Christmas break. It's not good enough, especially against a team that's in the bottom third of the league in terms of scoring goals. They average less than 3 goals a game. You can't be playing that aggressive. You got to keep things simple. That's what they have been doing throughout this really nice streak, and it got away from them in that game on Saturday. We're going to discuss this game on Sunday and how it mostly came back until the final 7 minutes, where they just decided to give all the fans a heart attack again, because there's no easy wins for this team this year. But still, you got to play more simple, more disciplined, and the Penguins did not do that in that game against the Islanders, the first half of the back-to-back. I also feel like, Pat, Tristan Jarry, not sharp enough. He was not good in that game.
Yeah, that's a game where I don't want to say that I will give Tristan Jarry a pass, because as our pal Josh Yo, he likes to say and write quite a lot, you are allowed to make a save. But when the team in front of when the team in front of him is playing as poorly as they are, that is very much a, hey, anybody want to join me kind of game, where you want him to make a couple saves here and there, especially the 5th goal. But at the same time, if the team in front of him is playing that poorly, I can at least put it lower on my list of concerns in a loss like that. Because like you were saying, to kind of build off that and transition into the victory on Sunday at PPG, you go back and you watch that Saturday game, and you see everything that plagued them. And it was a lot of the stuff that we've discussed on this show, not playing a full 60 minutes, not paying attention to detail in the neutral or defensive zones. You look at all that and you think, okay, This is all fixable. This is not a fatal flaw. This is not something that you just go, okay, this team is going to have to adapt to this deficiency or this inefficiency or this inability to do something. You go, all right, you clean that up the next night and you can likely come out with 2 points. And for the most part, they did that on Sunday. They played.
And I liked some of the quotes. Oh, I thought I didn't mean to.
No. Just one last quick thing, and I'll let you run. They clean all that up for the majority of the game. Very smart in the neutral zone. They owned the puck and kept it mostly in the Islanders zone for a vast majority of the game. And they played a solid, I would say, 54, 55 minutes at the end of the game. But you always expect that score effects push. When a team is down 3, a team is desperate, they're going to throw everything they got left at you at the end of it. So at the very least, I can give them half credit for playing a full 60. But overall, I like their game a lot more on Sunday night.
Oh, 100%. I would say the first, 53 minutes, they were by far the better team. The Islanders did have a pretty nice push to end the second period, especially on the power play. Then even after that expired, Nedeljkovic was making a lot of really nice saves. Patrick Waugh, complete sicko, by the way, in this game on Sunday. He is 100% part of the sickos committee, pulling the goalie with 7 minutes left. And I had a feeling that was coming because he has done that so often as a head coach. Doesn't matter if he was with the Islanders or when he was the head coach of the Avalanche, he would do that all the time. And I was like, I was waiting for it. And then he did it. And I'm like, yeah, still, you are a complete sicko, Patrick Waugh. I'll say it one more time.
But I will say this, though, that does get into a little bit of what I was talking about, the way the Islanders played that last 6 to 7 minutes. This is a deeply desperate team, to the point where before the Saturday game, the clip that went viral where they had an open practice and Patrick Waugh apologized to the fans in the building and said, hey, we are going to figure this out. We're going to turn it around. This is a desperate team. So down 3-0 with 7 minutes to go on the second half of a back-to-back. Okay, pull your goalie. Great, because what's the worst that can happen? Instead of losing by 3, you lose by 4. Who cares?
Right. No, I hear you. You know, they get the goal, really nice deflection. The Penguins, to their a little bit of credit after that, the next 2 minutes, they did push the play back a little bit, but those especially, Pat, those final 5 minutes, burn the tape, please. It was really bad defending by the Penguins in their own zone, especially during those 6-on-5s. And then, you know, you get the second goal, really bad bounce. I mean, that's not on Ned at all. But even after that, I mean, you know, Sid was robbed a couple of times. Brian Rust, I don't know how he didn't score there. That was one heck of a save by the Islanders netminder. But then they pull the goalie again, and there were about 4 to 5 times during that sequence where I was like, oh my God, they might actually tie this. And it would be peak Islanders if they did, because of how many problems they have caused the Penguins ever since the Penguins came into this league. I don't know what it is about that team on Long Island. Weird stuff happens against them, man. It's been happening well before I was even alive. It's just weird. And I always forget just how much of a pain in the butt Anders Lee is to play against. You cannot move him when he is in the front of the net. Just a total rat, very much like Michael Bunting, but I think it's Michael Bunting on steroids, if I'm being real. He is such a pain to play against on a nightly basis, even though he's a bit older now. You have Brock Nelson, Penguins killer there as well. But getting back to some more Penguin-centric stuff, some performances I really wanted to shout out for this game on Sunday. How about Nathan Clermont, Pat? NHL debut, firing everything to the net. I thought his gap control was great. I thought his play along the boards was great. He was playing some really sound, simple hockey, not making any dumb decisions with the puck. I know it's only one game. I really like the way he looked, though, and I want to see a little bit more of what he has to offer at some point. I know Marcus Pettersson's going to be coming back probably this week. He's full contact, according to Mike Sullivan, but I still want to see maybe a couple more games from this kid because I really liked what I saw from him in this one. Also, how about Michael Bunting, man? 14 points in his last 13 games. He was all over the ice once again. This is the Michael Bunting that we saw at the end of last season where the Penguins were really trying to push for the playoffs. He gets that really nice assist on Anthony Beauvillier's opening goal. He then gets the goal from a great Crosby assist, which we already discussed. He has been on fire throughout the Penguins' last 14, 15 games. Just a completely different player compared to what we saw during the first month of the season.
He has been exactly what the Penguins have needed. He looks a lot more like the guy who came over in the Gensel trade that almost helped this team get into the playoffs at the end of last season. And what have we been saying about him all season long? That is the player that has to show up for Michael Bunting to be an effective part of this team. As for Klerman, and I can't even make it a knock, he did take a penalty, but it was a good penalty to take. Nelson pulls off a really nice move against him, and if he doesn't take that penalty, he pretty much has a clear and free path to the net. So I will take that penalty all day long. I'm happy to see a guy battle to keep a player from getting that clear and open look. So I'm not going to dock points from him on that. Another person I got to shout out for tonight's game, or Sunday night's game. We're recording this Sunday night, which I will say, since I've already made the mistake, I've got the app pulled up. The Penguins currently in the second wild card spot, but the Senators and Wild are currently in the second period here around 9 o'clock on Sunday night. 1-1 tie. So if the Senators pull that off, things remain status quo. But anyway, back to the game. Alex Nedeljkovic, man, you briefly touched on that spurt of the last couple minutes of the second period where the Islanders were unable to capitalize on a power play, but they kept possession for quite a while. The last 30 or so seconds of the PK, the Islanders were coming on, and Alex Nedeljkovic was making some huge saves, at the very least, to get whistles, to keep the team ahead. And I have to applaud his effort, especially since, like the other goalie on the Penguins this year, he has not exactly been great, but in some of the big moments on Sunday night, he stepped up pretty big for this team.
Yeah, I think that's probably his best start of the season, if we're being real with ourselves. I felt like he made a lot of really big timely saves, especially late in the second. Heck, even when the Islanders were pushing in the final 7 minutes of the game, I thought he really stood tall. Those two goals, not his fault at all. I mean, he's not going to stop those. One of them, again, very much bad luck with the bad bounce, but he was great all game long. And that's what I want to see from Alex Nedeljkovic in more starts, not the level that we've seen from most of his other starts this year where he's been well below average. That game tonight, again, last night, because I know we're recording on Sunday, but that game is the blueprint for what I want to see in a lot more of Nedeljkovic's starts. I also will say, no real big update on Chris Letang. He did not play in this game, still being evaluated according to Mike Sullivan. Got hurt, it looks like, a bit late in that Saturday game against the Islanders. So that's why Nathan Klerman made his debut. But again, at least Marcus Pettersson, it looks like, Pat, getting closer to playing. He's full contact. Probably if they practice on Monday, which I'm not sure they will considering this back-to-back, but he'll probably take a morning skate on Tuesday. I would assume he'll probably be cleared for that game in Detroit, which will be big news considering how important of a player he is. But yeah, they get the 2 clean points. That's important. You're 4 points ahead of the Islanders. You go 2-1 this week, and that was the minimum for me. 2-1, 4 out of 6 points. I would have liked the 6 out of 6 to sweep that back-to-back and go up, not 4 points. You would have gone up 8 points on the Islanders if you had a clean sweep there. But hey, you get the 2 points, and now you try to get 2 more against the Red Wings on New Year's Eve.
At the very least, they are making it interesting.
Yeah.
One more game to go in the calendar year of 2024, and that will be on New Year's Eve at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Hunter and I will obviously preview that game on tomorrow's episode, but we are going to talk about that game as well as a couple other huge games looming for the Penguins the rest of this week. We'll make sure you're ready for that and more when we come back right after this. All right, welcome back. It is the Monday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, joined as always by the one and only, the illustrious Hunter Hodes. And it is a huge rest of the week for the Penguins, this one coming up, because as we know, we are recording this on Sunday night, so we don't know if they are still in a playoff spot or not. By the time this comes out, you will likely know the answer to that, dear listener. But for now, the Penguins currently do sit within the second wild card position in the Eastern Conference, but they are going to have some interesting matchups, so to speak, the rest of this week. 3 more games coming your way tomorrow. They will head to Detroit for a New Year's Eve matchup against the Red Wings, a team that has really been struggling as of late. Just fired their coach and hired Todd McLellan to step in. They get smoked in their first game against the Leafs with McLellan behind the bench. Then they bounce back pretty nicely and get a win against the Washington Capitals. So we'll see what happens with the Red Wings moving forward. And then after finishing up 2024 against some of the teams that they are above or battling with to get into the playoffs, the big boys are on the docket. They will play the Florida Panthers on Friday, and then they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday. So, Hunter, 3 massive games coming up. I think you're going to agree with this, but we'll find out. Tomorrow against the Red Wings, it's not a must win, but given the next week, it's a probably very much should win kind of game.
You got to get 2 clean points against a Red Wings team that is really struggling. You had Steve Yzerman come out and speak to the media and answer some pretty tough questions from Red Wings reporters. You know, I think a lot of the fans up there are really frustrated with the way this season is going, and rightfully so. I mean, they were sold on this team contending for a wild card spot again, and right now they're pretty behind the 8 ball. You're right. They just fired their head coach who looked like Dracula, so I can't make that joke anymore, sadly, for when the Penguins play the Red Wings. But Todd McLellan, really good coach, especially defensively. I think he's going to have that team playing at least a bit better to end the season. But the Penguins, they've already gotten 3 out of 4 points against the Red Wings this year. They took 2 clean points against the Red Wings to start the season. Then they lost in overtime in their only matchup in Pittsburgh. This is still one you got to win, though. The Red Wings are struggling. They're not very good. You need to get the 2 clean points there heading into that big stretch here this upcoming weekend against Carolina, who you've been bullied against this season, and the Panthers. That Panthers game, I know the Penguins won that game in Pittsburgh, but let's be honest, it was kind of a fluky win. The Panthers badly, and I mean badly, outplayed them for the majority of those 60 minutes. It felt like it was only a matter of time before the Panthers were going to tie that game in the third period. They eventually did before the Penguins won that game in overtime. But if you can split those 2 games while winning that game against the Red Wings, I will gladly take that, my friend. Go 2-1 this week. You get 4 out of 6 points. Heck, even if you get maybe 5 out of 6, go 2-0-1. We'll gladly take that as well, because it gets even more difficult after that. You have, the Blue Jackets, who the Penguins have already lost to once this year, though. I think the Penguins, again, very much a winnable game, especially at home, where the Blue Jackets really struggle to play in Pittsburgh. You then have the Oilers come to town the following week, which is always a tough game. The Penguins have been blitzed by the Oilers quite a bit these last few seasons. And then you have that humongous game against the Senators on January 11th, and there's a chance we could potentially see a doubleheader that day with the Penguins and the Steelers playing, because the Steelers are playing in the playoffs that weekend. The playoff schedule hasn't been announced yet, but we could potentially see a doubleheader for big Pittsburgh sports games that day, unless the NFL puts the Steelers on Sunday that weekend. But for this week, you beat the Red Wings, get the 2 clean points. That would be big, but you got to split those 2 games against Carolina and Florida, in my opinion.
That's pretty much where I'm standing. Is, again, it's not must win. It's not like if you lose to the Red Wings on Tuesday on New Year's Eve that all of the effort of the last month or so is for nothing and let's pack it up and go home. But you give yourself much more of a cushion to say split, or God forbid, go 0-2 against Carolina in Florida. You get 2 clean points against the Red Wings, and okay, if you're unable to beat 2 contending Eastern Conference teams in Florida and Carolina, you're not too upset about it and looking back at the Detroit game and thinking, man, that was a really wasted opportunity. Plus, you follow up the Florida Carolina games with a pretty long homestand. So they have suddenly figured out how to play at home. They're figuring out how to stack points. So if you can go 1-1-1, 2-1, something like that against this, or when you go through this stretch, 1-1-1, excuse me, it's 3 games, not 4. But if you're able to do that, you keep yourself right in the thick of this race. And if Ottawa or whomever decide to drop a couple games, or they just have an extended time off, you can start putting some space between you and these teams and giving yourself a little bit more breathing room, which will make March and April a little less stressful.
100%. And you're right. They do have that pretty long homestand in January, Pat. It's a 5-game homestand, but then look what they got after that. 7-game road trip to end the month of January. They have the California trip mixed in with a trip to Buffalo and Washington. That is going to be an insane stretch for this team. So again, man, got to bank these points when you can, especially against a team that's a lot lower than you in the standings and the Red Wings. Again, we'll have a full preview for that game for our Tuesday episode, for also our final episode of 2024. Thank you all so much for tuning in throughout this year. We love you all, but that's a game where you have to bank those points. You know, that 6 out of 8 points in your last 4 games. If you're able to do it, I think you got to do that, because it makes a split for the weekend, that much more bearable, because, you lose that game, especially in regulation, it just gets a bit dicier when you play 2 really, and I mean really good teams.
For sure. But like Hunter said, we will have a full preview for you coming up tomorrow for the Detroit game. But for now, that is going to do it for the Monday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. We appreciate you, as always, tuning in, especially those of you who have been riding with us for all of 2024. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you once again for tuning in. We'll be back with a fresh episode to get you ready for Penguins and Red Wings on Tuesday.